All right, so today we're going to take a deep dive into something I know a lot of you struggle with, and that's achieving goals without burning out in the process. We've got a ton of material here. Looks like you sent over some research articles, maybe some personal notes even, and wow, there's some really great stuff in here.
Yeah, it seems like everyone these days is looking for that sweet spot. How can I be ambitious and go after what I want, but without burning myself out in the process?
Totally. And one of the things that really stood out to me when I was going through this material was this idea of setting smart goals. But it's not like that generic advice you always hear. Just write down your goals and they'll magically happen. This deep dive goes way deeper than that.
Oh, absolutely. It's like taking that SMART goal concept and actually making it work for you. Because let's be real, we've all set goals that just ended up, sitting on a to-do list somewhere, never to see the light of day.
For sure. It's about turning those goals into actual achievements.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, wanting to launch a new product line, right? One of these articles actually talks about how to use SMART goals for something that big and complex.
It's not just about saying, okay, I'm going to launch this product line by next spring and calling it a day, right?
Yeah, actually. It's about breaking it down into all those smaller steps, like the design phase, prototyping, marketing, all those pieces, and then giving each of those steps its own mini SMART goal.
Yeah, you're basically creating a step-by-step roadmap, not just a final destination.
I like that. And the cool thing is that it forces you to think about potential problems before they even happen.
Right, like what could cause a delay in the design process, or what are those make or break moments in the marketing campaign? It's like you're identifying all of those roadblocks ahead of time so you can be ready for them.
It's almost like creating a game plan before you hit the field. And speaking of strategy, the Pareto principle, or that 80-20 rule, it really stood out to me here. But this deep dive doesn't just explain what it is. It actually helps you put it into practice.
Absolutely. We're not just learning about it, we're actually figuring out how to use it.
So for your product launch, for example, we could ask, what are the 20% of activities that are going to drive 80% of the results? Is it about getting that one key partnership? Or maybe it's nailing the social media campaign?
It's all about finding those leverage points, the things that are going to have the biggest impact.
Okay, so we've got these big, ambitious goals. We're breaking them down strategically.
Yeah.
But then comes the hard part, the actual doing of the work. The time management tips in this material are a game changer, especially the stuff about time blocking and flexible deadlines.
Yeah, time blogging. I mean, it can be a total game changer. It's like taking back control of your calendar instead of letting it control you. What if you actually blocked off specific time for that new product development instead of trying to squeeze it in whenever you had a free minute?
I know it sounds kind of counterintuitive, right? Like you're actually scheduling less free time.
It seems that way.
But the research actually shows that when you're more intentional about how you use your time, when you actually make space for these important tasks, you end up being way more productive. And you know what that often means? More free time in the long run.
That's right. You're working smarter, not harder. And that brings us to the idea of flexible deadlines. You've got this big vision for your product launch, but you also have to be realistic. Unexpected things are going to happen.
Things always come up.
Exactly. The key is to give yourself a little bit of wiggle room, a little bit of a buffer, so that when those curveballs inevitably come your way, you can adapt without freaking out.
It's like building in those shock absorbers so you can bounce back from any setbacks.
You're talking about resilience, and that's something else that these sources really emphasize. But they don't just say, hey, be more resilient. They actually give you tools to do it.
And that's what I love about this. It's practical advice. You can actually use it.
Right, like they talk about mindfulness. For example, mindfulness can actually help you regulate how you respond to stress.
It's like hitting the pause button before you react.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We've all been there, right, when something goes wrong and we immediately start to panic.
Oh, yeah.
But mindfulness can help you approach those situations with a lot more calm and clarity. And then they also talk about things like exercise and deep breathing, not just for your physical health, but as a way to manage stress hormones, too.
It's all connected, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
The mental, emotional, physical health, it all plays a part. And what's fascinating?
What's that?
A lot of these sources actually argue that resilience is key, not just for dealing with setbacks, but also for staying motivated over the long haul.
Because, let's be honest, going after big goals, it's a marathon, not a sprint. It's about pacing yourself, taking care of yourself so you can keep going.
Exactly. And that leads us to another super important point that keeps coming up in these materials: work-life balance.
I feel like everybody knows that work-life balance is important, but it's so easy to let it slide when you're busy, It's like, I'll rest when I'm done, but that's how you end up burning out.
And that's what these sources are trying to help us avoid. They use some great analogies, too.
Like what?
It's like trying to drive a car with an empty gas tank. You got to refuel, you got to recharge to give yourself that downtime so you can come back stronger.
So it's not just about working smarter. It's also about resting smarter.
That's a great way to put it. This deep dive really emphasizes protecting your personal time, making space for those relationships and hobbies that bring you joy.
Yeah, those things aren't distractions. They're what keep you going.
They're like those pit stops that allow you to keep racing towards the finish line.
And speaking of staying on track, there are some really interesting insights here about the importance of regular check-ins and celebrating those small wins along the way.
Yeah, it's like when you're climbing a mountain and you stop for a minute to catch your breath and you look back and you're like, wow, I've come so far.
Exactly. It's about taking those moments to, kind of step back and look at the bigger picture. Not to beat yourself up if you're not exactly where you thought you'd be.
Right, it's not about judgment. It's more about checking in, seeing where you're at, and then adjusting your course if you need to, and celebrating the progress you've already made.
And I think that's where the whole celebrating small wins thing comes in. It's like you get that little hit of dopamine, and it actually helps rewire your brain to want more progress.
Yeah.
One of the articles even talked about that. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, it's about training yourself to enjoy the journey, not just the destination. And that can make a huge difference when it comes to avoiding burnout.
Because when you're always focused on what you haven't done yet, it's easy to get discouraged.
Exactly. But when you take the time to celebrate even those little wins along the way, it keeps your motivation up. It keeps you energized.
Just like those fitness apps that give you points and badges, for hitting certain milestones. It sounds kind of silly, but it actually works.
Well, it works because it's tapping into something real about our brains. We're more likely to stick with something if we feel like we're making progress and, we're getting rewarded for our efforts.
So we've talked about setting goals, strategy, resilience, self-care. But there's another piece to this puzzle that I think is often overlooked, and that's the power of community. This theme kept popping up in the materials you sent over.
Yeah, and for good reason. I mean, we're social creatures. We're not meant to do everything alone, especially when we're talking about these big, challenging goals. Having that support system, whether it's a mentor, an accountability partner, even just a friend who gets it, it can make such a difference.
Because there are going to be times when you hit a wall, when you just want to give up. You need someone to remind you why you're doing this in the first place.
Exactly. And sometimes you just need that outside perspective, someone who can look at your situation with fresh eyes. A mentor can give you guidance. An accountability partner can help you stay on track. And even just having someone to vent to can be a huge relief.
Yeah. And don't forget the power of celebrating your wins with someone who gets it. It's like having your own personal cheering section. Plus, seeing other people achieve their goals can be super inspiring.
Yeah, you're all on this journey together. You're learning from each other. You're supporting each other. And I think that's one of the best ways to prevent burnout because it reminds you that you're not alone. Everyone faces challenges, and it's okay to ask for help.
It's like that saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Love that. And that's really what this whole deep dive is about, isn't it? It's about finding a sustainable way to achieve your goals. It's not just about strategy and hard work. It's also about self-care, resilience, and having a supportive community.
So to kind of sum it all up, what are the key takeaways here? What are the non-negotiables for achieving our goals without burning out?
I think it comes down to three main things. First, you need a clear vision and a plan. That means setting smart goals, identifying those leverage points, and creating a roadmap for yourself.
Okay, so clear vision and a plan. Got it.
Second, you got to take care of yourself. Make self-care a priority. Build that resilience and give yourself permission to rest and recharge.
Makes sense. What's the third one?
Third, build your community. Find your mentors, your accountability partners, the people who are going to support you and cheer you on and keep you motivated.
So it's like the three legs of a stool. You need all of them to create a solid foundation.
Exactly. And before we wrap up, I think it'd be great to leave our listeners with a little something to think about.
Yeah, a little food for thought.
Okay, so here's a question for you. Think about one goal that you're working towards right now. And what's one small but meaningful action you can take this week to put one of these strategies into practice? Maybe it's scheduling 15 minutes every morning for mindfulness. Maybe it's reaching out to a potential mentor. Or maybe it's just taking an hour on Sunday to plan your week and identify those top 20% tasks.
It's those small steps that add up to big changes, right?
That's the beauty of it. You don't have to overhaul your whole life overnight. Just pick one small thing that feels doable and commit to it for a week. See how it goes. See how it makes you feel. See if it helps you move closer to your goals.
It's all about experimenting, finding what works for you, and then building from there.
Exactly. And remember, the goal isn't to be perfect. It's about making progress. It's about finding a way to achieve your goals that feels good, that honors your well-being.
Because at the end of the day, it's not just about reaching the destination. It's about enjoying the journey along the way.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And who knows, maybe by incorporating these strategies, you'll not only achieve your goals, but you'll actually surpass them in ways you never thought possible.
Now that's inspiring. Well, I think we've reached the summit of this deep dive. It's been amazing exploring these ideas with you.
I've really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
And to our listener, we hope this deep dive has given you some valuable tools and insights to go after your goals with renewed energy and a healthy dose of self-care. Remember, you got this.
Keep learning, keep growing, and keep reaching for those stars.
And until next time, happy achieving.
It's really about those little steps, you know? Those are what make a big difference.
Yeah, you don't have to do everything at once.
Right, exactly.
It's about progress, not perfection. And, at the end of the day, it's about finding a way to achieve those goals, but in a way that feels good, in a way that, honors your well-being.
So it's not just about the destination, it's also about enjoying the journey.
That's a great way to put it. And I think, when you start incorporating these strategies, you might actually find yourself exceeding your goals in ways that you never thought possible.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, I think that about wraps up this deep dive. It's been great chatting with you about all this.
Likewise, it's always so interesting to, really dive into these topics and see how they can be applied to everyday life.
And to all our listeners out there, we hope this deep dive has given you some useful tools and some inspiration to go after those goals. Remember, you got this.
Keep learning, keep growing, and keep reaching for the stars.
Until next time, happy achieving.